Imagine a freezing winter morning in London where the unthinkable is about to happen. The man chosen by God to rule the nation is going to die by the hands of his own people. This was not merely a political disagreement. It was a raging fire that burned through every town. Brother fought against brother, and fathers fought sons in a bloody war for the soul of England. At the center of this storm stood King Charles I. He was a man of high taste and dignity, but he carried a dangerous belief that would ultimately lead to his tragic downfall.
Charles believed in the divine right of kings. He thought his power came directly from God, meaning no earthly man or parliament could question his decisions, no matter how unpopular or costly they were.
However, being a king was expensive. Charles needed vast amounts of money to fund his lavish lifestyle and wars, but the royal treasury was empty, and he needed a way to fill it quickly. By law, the king had to ask Parliament for tax money, but Charles refused to share power. He dismissed the politicians and decided to rule alone, taxing his subjects without their proper consent. For 11 long years, Charles ruled without a parliament. He used ancient laws and secret courts to squeeze money from the people, creating an atmosphere of fear and resentment across the entire country. Religion also fueled the fire. Many people in England were Puritans who wanted a simple church. They feared Charles and his advisors were secretly trying to bring back the elaborate rituals of Catholicism. Charles made a fatal mistake when he tried to force his religious prayer book on Scotland. The Scots rebelled instantly, raising an army and marching south, demanding that the king respect their faith. Bankrupt and facing a Scottish invasion, Charles had no choice. He was forced to call Parliament back to London to ask for money. But the men who returned were not in a giving mood. This new Parliament, led by fierce critics, refused to grant taxes until their grievances were addressed. They demanded the execution of the king's advisors and laws that ensured they could never be dissolved again. Furious, Charles did something no king had ever done. He marched into the House of Commons with soldiers to arrest 5 leading members. But the men had been warned and had already escaped. The king looked at the empty seats and realized he had lost control. He famously said, "I see the birds have flown." It was a humiliation that destroyed the last bridge between him and Parliament. London rose up in anger against the king. Fearing for his family's safety, Charles fled the capital city. The government had collapsed. There were no more words to be said. Now there would be war. In August 1642, at Nottingham, Charles formally raised his royal standard. The wind blew it down that night, a bad omen, but the signal was clear. The king was calling his loyal subjects to fight. Every man in England had to choose a side. Those who supported the king were called royalists or Cavaliers. Those who supported Parliament were known as parliamentarians or Roundheads because of their short haircuts. The royalists were often wealthy landowners and experienced horsemen. The parliamentarians controlled the navy and the rich merchants of London. It was a clash between tradition and a new, rising power in the land. Throughout the country, plowshares were beaten into swords. Peaceful villages became training grounds. Men who had never held a weapon were handed long pikes and heavy muskets, preparing to kill their fellow countrymen. The king had a secret weapon, his nephew, Prince Rupert. A brilliant but reckless cavalry commander, Rupert led the royalist horsemen, striking fear into the hearts of the inexperienced parliamentary soldiers. The first major battle happened at Edgehill. It was a chaotic mess. Neither side knew how to fight a real war yet. Thousands died, but when the smoke cleared, there was no clear winner. The war dragged on with no end in sight. Battles were fought in summer heat and winter snow. England was bleeding. It seemed the king had the advantage, as Parliament's armies were disorganized and slow. From the chaos emerged a man named Oliver Cromwell. He was a country gentleman with no military training, but he possessed a genius for war and a burning religious conviction that inspired his men. Cromwell realized that to beat the king, he needed more than just soldiers. He needed men of faith. He recruited religious men who fought with discipline. They became known as the legendary Ironsides. At the Battle of Marston Moor, Cromwell's cavalry destroyed the royalist forces in the north. It was the first major victory for Parliament and proved that the king's soldiers were not invincible after all. Parliament made a bold move. They passed the self-denying Ordinance, forcing politicians to resign from the army. This paved the way for professional soldiers to lead, removing incompetent lords from command. The result was the new model army. For the first time, soldiers wore matching red coats and were paid regularly. They were a professional fighting machine, disciplined, trained, and utterly dedicated to victory. This army was different. They marched to the singing of psalms. They believed they were doing God's work. This spiritual morale made them fearless in the face of the enemy's cannons and swords. In 1645, the decisive moment arrived at the Battle of Naseby. The king's army faced the new model army. This battle would determine the fate of the king and the future of the nation. Prince Rupert's cavalry chased enemies off the field, leaving the king exposed. Cromwell's disciplined troops smashed into the royalist infantry. The king's army was destroyed. Charles fled, leaving his artillery and secrets behind. After the battle, Parliament captured the king's private letters. They revealed he was trying to bring foreign armies to fight against his own people. This turned public opinion completely against him. Charles was now a fugitive in his own kingdom. His cities surrendered one by one. Oxford, his capital, fell. With no army left, the king rode north in disguise, hoping to find mercy. He surrendered to the Scottish army, thinking they might support him against the English Parliament. But the Scots had no love for the king, who had tried to change their religion years before. In a final act of betrayal, the Scots sold King Charles back to the English Parliament for £400,000. The king was now a prisoner, bought and sold like a common piece of merchandise. Even in prison, Charles refused to compromise. He played his enemies against each other, secretly plotting a second war while pretending to negotiate. He believed time was on his side. He was wrong. The army had enough of the king's games. They marched on Parliament and blocked anyone who wanted to make a deal with Charles. This military coup left only a small group of hardliners. This remaining group, known as the Rump Parliament, made a terrifying decision. They declared that the king was responsible for all the bloodshed during the war and must be put on trial. In January 1649, a special court was set up in Westminster Hall. It was an unprecedented event. Never before had a monarch been put on trial by his own subjects for treason.
Charles sat before his judges with his tat on, a sign of disrespect. He refused to plead innocent or guilty. He argued that no court on earth had the power to judge a king. During the trial, the silver head of the king's cane fell off and rolled away. No one stooped to pick it up for him. Charles had to retrieve it himself, a symbol of his lost power. The arguments lasted for days, but the outcome was decided. The court found Charles Stuart guilty of being a tyrant, traitor, and murderer. The sentence was death by beheading. The king was doomed. Charles was allowed a final tearful meeting with his young children. He told them not to grieve and to stay true to their faith. It was a moment of human sorrow amidst the political chaos. On the morning of January 30th, Charles walked to the scaffold. He wore 2 heavy shirts so that he would not shiver from the cold, lest the crowd think he was trembling with fear. A massive crowd gathered. Usually executions were noisy, but this time the people were silent. They watched in awe and horror as the anointed king prepared to meet his end. Charles laid his head on the block and signaled he was ready. The axe fell in one clean stroke. The king was dead. A collective groan rose from the crowd, a sound never heard before. With the king gone, the monarchy was abolished. England was declared a republic, a commonwealth. The House of Lords was closed. The world watched in shock as England tried to rule itself without a king. Oliver Cromwell eventually became Lord Protector, ruling almost like a king himself. The war had ended the monarchy, but it left a legacy of military rule and a question: who truly holds the power? The Civil War shaped modern democracy. It proved that even a king is subject to the law. Thank you for watching.
Please like, comment, and subscribe for more stories from history's most turbulent times.